It's very, very important if your child has been hospitalized and he or she has never had an IEP or a 504 plan that you must consider evaluation.
Right.
And so, Jen, let's talk about that because it really is critical.
It's critical to talk about what we do going forward, but one of the questions I then ask a parent when they contact me is, has your child ever been evaluated by the school district? It's not at all uncommon in my experience that a child was evaluated early in their education, sometimes even identified for services early
for
in their
something
education.
completely different,
Totally,
perhaps.
well, or what might have looked different
Right.
then and now
Right.
looks like an emotional disability now.
Right.
Or, sadly, was never picked up on early, and now it is the student has developed an emotional disability in large part because their educational needs have not been met for years after years
Right.
after years.
Right.
And that's a shame, but I do see that more often than I'd like. And so one of the things when I'm looking at a child's records and I'm trying to figure out if this is a student who should be evaluated for an emotional disability is, has your child ever gotten any testing? And what I often see is, if the answer is yes, the testing usually had nothing to do with an emotional disability.
Right.
So as an example, you have a 5th grader who's acting very impulsively and maybe getting into trouble, and the school district refers the child for an evaluation. And the evaluation they do is the testing one does to figure out if there is dyslexia or some other specific learning
Right.
disability. And the test results say, no, the child doesn't have a specific learning disability, which probably wasn't the suspected area of disability at the time anyway, but most parents have no idea. When they just get the test results, they say, okay, he or she doesn't meet the criteria.
Right.
Well, fast forward to 10th grade, and now this kid is really in and out of hospitals, really struggling emotionally. And now what we really want to make sure is, are we evaluating the suspected area of
Right.
disability? And
That's
at this
the
point,
key.
the suspected area may be an emotional disability, and that might require psychiatric evaluation. Yes, the school will probably want to also do academic testing and other kinds of testing to rule in or out other kinds of disabilities. But you want to always make sure when you're doing an evaluation, the law requires you're evaluating in all suspected areas of disability. It's a trap parents fall into quite often, which is that the school says, let's do an evaluation. They evaluate the child for a disability that nobody ever suspected the child of having to begin with. They come to the conclusion the child's not eligible because they didn't have the disability that nobody thought they had to begin with.
But at the end of the day, evaluations are very, very important because if you don't evaluate, you can't identify.
That's right.
And if you don't identify, you can't address the issues.
Right.
And so it's a real important thing to do.